Hello, horror fan best friends and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 34th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror, monster horror, Evil Dead knockoff horror, folk horror, body horror, sci-fi horror, the horror-adjacent thrillers, the psychologically terrifying scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damn cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. It all helps to get the word out and bring some much-needed love to this whole podcast. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a rating when you stop by. 5 stars is always appreciated. If you haven't had the chance to check out the Midsummer episode, please do. Joe Medforce came by and brought a really emotional appearance, and by the time this episode posts, he'll have made all of his announcements regarding Blood Disco. So be sure to head to blooddisco.com to check him out. And enough of all that housekeeping. Today I have the pleasure of welcoming back Mario Rivera. Mario, how the hell are you?
I am doing good. I'm glad that we're talking about not a obscure movie. Like last time, not a lot of people watched my episode. We were in a battle of who's getting the most views. Now I'm coming back with yet another obscure horror movie. God damn it.
Yeah. But those are some of the most fun ones. So I have a feeling we're going to have a good time with this one. Today's episode features 1985's Demons. Directed by Lamberto Bava, son of Mario Bava. Right. Mario, why Demons?
Man, this was one of those movies that I remember catching on like one of those lists that you'd either watch on TV, like there's like the 100 scariest movies, or something you just read on Bloody Disgusting. And the imagery always struck me. There's this image that I'm playing in the background of my screen. I don't know if I can see it in the video at home there, but essentially there's just these ghouls with these glowing eyes. And when I found out that it was essentially a horror movie in a movie theater, I'm like, sold. All right, what's this all about? I go and I watch it one day, just off the whim, because it was on Shudder when I first saw it too. I saw it a couple of years ago at this point. And I play it, have that bumping 1980s like wave music, like that European wave music, and I'm like, okay. And then the movie begins, and I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is gonna be a classic. This is a great film.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool score. They're borrowing heavily from In the Hall of Mountain King from time to time, but that's fun because it's like you said, kind of a synth version of it. And then, holy crap, they must have spent a lot of budget on the licensed music in this movie because. Yeah. You got Motley Crue and Billy Idol and Go West and Scorpions and all these 80s bands that just are absolutely perfect for a movie like this.
It's the Billy Idol drop that is in the middle of this movie. I forgot was in this movie, and when it happened, I was like, "Oh my god!" Because I've been recently listening to a lot of Billy Idol because I feel like he's underappreciated. And then when that song dropped, I was like, "That's awesome!" That's just in the middle of this scene with these punks. It's so good.
Yes. The scene that, for whatever reason, feels like it has no place in this film other than to add just a few more people into the story.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a perfect needle drop into this film for sure. This is a movie that I knew existed, but I had never touched until you brought it up. And again, like we said, thank God it was on Shudder.
Yes.
I just saw it for the first time last week. Holy crap. The descriptor of Evil Dead in a movie theater is absolutely perfect. And the whole thing of, events in the film mirroring events in the movie that they're watching. And, that old trope that you don't see that often, but, especially in horror films, but is just a ton of fun. Mm-hmm. I thank you for wedging this one into my life. I appreciate that. It's produced by Dario Argento. Yes. He's one of 4 writers on this as well. Definitely not a giallo, but it's got that Italian horror. We care much more about what you're seeing and what you're experiencing than any actual plot type of vibe.
Yes.
So, Yeah, very much appreciate getting to watch this. This was a ton of fun.
Adds the color too. There's so much color pops in the
Oh
movie as
yeah,
well, which is just like, oh man, that's just an Italian trope at this point. But like the
yeah,
blues, the yellow, like the colors I have in the background are blues, yellows, and then the greens, the purples. Like there's so many great little color
yeah.
effects in this movie.
Yeah, yeah, with and with all the practical effects, there's so much bright
Yeah.
red and green.
Yes.
Very goopy in all the best ways. But yeah, yeah, those are just like staples of Italian horror. Love it.
Mhm.
But yeah, yeah, again, much appreciated getting to experience this one finally, and then just watch it again for funsies, just getting ready for this. So it's good. It's good. Why don't we hop into it? I don't want to be too slavish to the plot or anything here, but I just kind of broke down some of the main beats so that we'd have something to, keep us on track and everything. I mean, this beginning in the Berlin subway, and like you said, you got that synth score going.
Yes.
Um, we're introduced to we don't know her name yet, Cheryl. She's on the subway and she's going to class, and there's a bunch of punks in the train, and when she finally gets closer to her destination, she sees this flash of this dude in this creepy mask who doesn't really appear to be on the train,
No.
but it's kind of weird. But I love this whole, sort of chase scene where she thinks that there's somebody there, and then we clearly see, the heavy boots and everything. And yeah, I love how she's running, but when she gets to the escalator, she just rides it up
Yeah.
instead of running up the escalator. Did you notice that
I
too?
did notice that. It's like, oh, your urgency just went away. Kind of like me too. Whenever I like rushing to someplace, I'm like, oh, I got to get somewhere. But once I hit the escalator, it's just like a chill moment. So I
Mhm.
love that it's in the middle of this sort of like faux fake chase scene. Which oddly enough, this whole scene, this whole setup, oddly reminded me of Suspiria. Because I remember that begins in a train station, if I'm not mistaken. So I was just like, oh, that's kind of a fun connection to Dario Argento. But yeah, no, this the way that the movie begins was such a fun way. It kind of also reminded me of another movie I love a lot. Is I think it's The House of the Devil, where it just has that needle drop.
Yeah.
Yeah, only just because it's just a woman, traveling while the music's playing. The titles are coming up. Very much had that same vibe and feel, and so I appreciate it for both this movie and also now back to that movie as well.
Yeah, yeah. And it turns out this dude's not actually chasing her so much as, making sure that she gets a free pass to this movie theater. Um, and she sees he's handing them out to other people, so she's a little less concerned at this point. She chases after him and requests another one because she's got a friend waiting for her.
Yes.
And then asks this dude if the mask has anything to do with the movie that they're promoting or anything. He just stares at her. It's and it's this like metallic, like
Yeah.
Andrew Lloyd Webber Phantom of the Opera
Yes, it is.
style, like half mask thing.
You could have told me this guy was Doug Jones. I would have believed you because he also looks like Doug Jones.
Yeah, he kind of does, doesn't he? Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think the dude speaks a word in the film too, even at,
No.
later bits. But yeah, yeah, he's sufficiently creepy. And she gets that other ticket and she runs outside. We're introduced to her friend Kathy, and this is very much one of those Italian horror films with the international cast where
Yes.
they record everybody in their native language and then dub everyone in English then. And it's very clear.
It's funny you say that because like there's also scenes though where like clearly they're mouthing the same words as English. So that's why I'm like, huh, are some of them Italian actors and some of them are American actors, which I think is true, but I don't know. It's funny. I see it sometimes. I'm just like, that's a choice. But yeah, it's a different language.
Yeah, yeah. I think they actually have like a specific term for that too, and I can't think what it is. It's going to drive me nuts. But yeah, it's once again one of these Italian horror films set in Germany for some reason.
Yes.
Just like Suspiria.
Oh, love it.
just just an absolute favorite of mine. But God, more similarities. Yes, there we go. So yeah, they decide to cut class. They're making fun of their strict teacher. I think they're music students or something like that. I can't quite recall, but they're going to this theater they've never heard of, the Metropole. And holy shit, does this theater have
Yeah.
killer sign? Oh my God.
Yes.
It is like some great graphic art there for that.
Still a real place, still a place you can go to. Which is
Yeah, it's like a club or something now.
Yeah. They have horror
I
conventions
was
there.
looking that up. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah, I love that it was, basically all the exterior shots are shot in Berlin too. It's awesome. But yeah, they finally make it to this place. I think before they get there, we're introduced to the usher character, and it's so weird because future spoilers. She's a victim later as well. Yet she's clearly employed by this theater. Clearly is very dutiful in her job and everything. And she seems like so spooky and like she's involved with this somehow, but she's not.
No,
it's
she's just very good at her job, Joe. Just so good.
Yeah, she's
adds to the ambiance.
Dedicated. Oh yeah. But yeah, it's so weird because it's supposed to be this newly renovated theater, and yeah, it does look like very, very 80s decor inside.
Yeah.
And everything's all cleaned up for the most part, except this like back room that she's getting ready in that's got like an active leak going, and there's water all over the floor, and okay, so they're still in the middle of renovations then. That's what's going on. But I think this is basically when they're getting to the theaters where we're introduced to a lot of the other main people that we'll get to meet along the way. We've got the two preppy boys that try to move in on them. You got George and Ken,
which are just the most generic like himbo names.
Oh yeah,
George and Ken.
Yeah. And George, obviously played by a very, very Italian gentleman as well. But either he's dubbed well or doing his level best to, provide that American accent, because we're all American here in Berlin. That's what they seem to be shooting for. But, we also get, the blind man and his daughter / helper / niece. I can't remember.
A little vague.
Definitely a little vague. We get this older married couple that the guy is such an asshole. And wow, they drive that point home repeatedly in this film. And then you've got the pimp Tony with his
my
couple
favorite
of girls.
I love that.
Oh yeah,
so much.
Tony's great. And you get, what are they? Rosemary and Carmen. We know Rosemary because her name is said a lot in this film. And her character is pretty great too.
Her visual design of her version of the demon creature looks incredible. Mm-hmm. Just her face has the perfect lines for it. It's just awesome. Yeah, and it's framed really well with her hair and everything. It's her character is great. So as everybody's kind of milling around in the lobby here, the boys introduce themselves to the girls. George, he helps them out with the Coke machine and everything. God, that Coke sounds really good right now, even though I've got a coffee in front of me. but yeah. We've got the ticket taker there. It's so weird because everybody's milling in all sorts of different directions and everything. And I don't know, it's strange to me. But as they're all coming in, you see this like dirt bike with this oddly costumed mannequin with a katana who's also holding this demon mask, this metallic demon mask. Yes.
And Rosemary, she picks up the mask and puts it on, trying to, spook her friend Carmen. And of course, it scratches her and cuts her face.
Yes.
And Tony immediately is just all, this is why you don't touch shit that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah.
Gives her major static.
This is why you don't read from the book.
Yes. We know all about that from these kinds of movies. But yeah, they put it back on the mannequin, and everybody makes their way into the theater, and it's wow, this is an old movie theater with all those wooden benches and everything. Yeah. It's almost like this is a converted church or something. It's interesting. But they all settle in for the film, and I love that when the music kicks off in the movie, and in the lyrics, you hear the phrase street toy, and all I can think of is Kevin Coelho, the Peruvian street toy. And I'm like, this is an actual phrase.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Oh, Lord.
Yeah. I can't believe I caught that. But yeah. Yes. The film they're watching, which I don't even think is titled.
No, and then there's no previews either. It just starts playing.
Very much like some sneak previews. They don't bother with trailers before them. So, but it starts with a couple of people on dirt bikes riding through the night, and they're going to this creepy old manor, and apparently they're bringing their girlfriends to investigate some kind of tomb that might possibly be the last resting place of Nostradamus in this horrible horror movie that they've all gone to see.
Which can we stop for a second? Can we talk about the logistics of shooting that movie and having that be tied to this movie in an actual way? Obviously, that's never explained, which is fine. You don't have never explain that. Never explain how they're somehow connected. But I just love how much like what actually happens in that movie is so reflective, obviously, what happens in what actually goes on. But the fact that exists in universe is awesome.
Yes. And also that they originally wanted to just use old snippets of films from Argento and others, as the film that they're watching instead. But I'm so glad we got this horrible piece of shit instead.
It's so good. So good. Because it's so reflective of movies that were actually happening at the time. One thing I also want to point out, did you pay attention to when they're in the theater, before they go in to watch the movie? In the theater, there's posters. Did you see all the posters?
Oh, yeah. There? Yeah, you got the Argento one. What is it, like 4 Flies on Gray Velvet or whatever?
Yeah.
And then there's a
Metropolis one.
Yep, and an AC/DC poster,
which was great
documentary that they had done.
And Terminator, which was also awesome.
Oh yeah, I did. Yep.
I was like, this puts it perfectly paced in time. I was like, that's awesome.
Yes. Oh God. And I love all those old posters too. That's awesome. But also the Terminator thing is kind of perfect just because of the guy with the metallic mask. Very much looks like a messed up T-800 or something. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yes, within the movie, and also there's people throughout the theater that are freaking out that the movie they have gone to see is a horror movie. I've never had seen people have this kind of reaction to being surprised watching a horror film before, but whatever. The boys are using this as an excellent opportunity to move in on the young college girls. And let's see here. What else? There's the married couple, and she's like, "Oh, I'm never going to be able to sleep tonight." And meanwhile, the Tony and the girls, they're just laughing it up, having a great time,
good old time.
You've got the usher.
There's the couple
not to smoke.
There's the couple that keep kissing each other and are just all over each other throughout the whole movie. They're awesome only because of, sadly, what happens later, but just the setup of those two like teens that just will not just stay away from each other is awesome.
Yep. They're good too. We mentioned we've got the blind man who has gone to go see a movie theater with somebody along the way to do audio description for him.
Yes.
I like I love how he's asking if the characters on the screen are scared.
It's good.
Yes.
They are scared.
Yes, Werner, they're scared. Um yeah, the kids in the film within the film, they go down into this crypt and there's bats flying out and all the tropes and everything else. And I love how the tomb that they find has a big ass N on it. And that doesn't quite clue them in quite enough until they wipe away more dirt on the front of it, and it clearly spells out Nostradamus on the front of it. It's so bad. But like we talked about, it is very much like a film of the times, right?
Yes.
And you get the people on the screen, they, pull out a book. We all know better. You don't read from the book in a creepy tomb. But also there is a mask that's all wrapped up, and it's, a duller version of the mask that was in the lobby. And of course, one of the characters puts it on his face and cuts himself with it. And Rosemary has a pretty strong reaction to this after this just happened to her. And she starts freaking out a little bit and decides to run off to the restroom to, try to tend to her wound. And let's see here. She races off, has some kind of a weird encounter with the usher who just kind of stares at her. And I guess the usher's more of a good red herring than anything.
Very much so, because it keeps adding to the fact of like, does she know what's going on? Like, is she knowing what's about to happen? Like, is she very much a part of this? And it's fun just to have her as that character, but it is great to see the reveal later of just like, nope, she's just as terrified as everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then things kind of happen pretty fast from there.
Yeah.
Rosemary gets into the bathroom. She's kind of stumbling a little bit, and I love the back and forth between her emoting at the mirror and then the close up of the wound that is, clearly something with a bladder behind it,
pulsating and
pulse, and and next thing you know, it's grown about 5 times its size and just bursts in this wonderfully disgusting eruption of pus. And she's freaking out and screaming, and we just got back to the theater with more freaking out and screaming. I think the character who put on the mask is like stabbing some of them at this point.
Something's going on.
It's at first I thought it was the character stabbing himself, which would have been a great possessed character type of move. But no, I don't think it was quite that. And everybody in the theater is disturbed by what's going on. You've got the young couple that you mentioned, the girl's burying her head in his shoulder and asking when it's safe to look. You've got Kathy, who was, not super keen on hanging out with these two boys, very much appreciating Ken's presence at that point. And everybody's, appropriately scared by the scary movie. At this point, Carmen's a little concerned about what's going on with Rosemary.
Yes.
And, how long she's been taking. And, Tony plays a little bit of grab ass with her as he tells her not to get lost as well. And Carmen makes it to the restroom, sees a bloody mess at the sink, goes by the different stalls, and finally finds Rosemary, who turns around and is clearly a demon.
Just disgusting. Like, in comparison to now what we've been somewhat teased at with the movie, this looks far greater effect than what they were doing in the movie.
I love the claw effects.
Yeah.
Just the bony ridges on the fingers and everything. And you get that little tease before she turns around because you see the clawed hand on the side of the stall.
Yes.
But her face is masked by her hair. And, she's got this super bright green goop coming out of her face and everything else. And well, Carmen tries to flee. she gets slashed across the throat by Rosemary's claws, and Carmen just gets a little lost in all of these, frankly, Black Lodge style curtains that she just can't seem to find her way out of. She ends up making her way behind the theater's screen, and it's great because she's having her own reaction to the scratches and the transferring of the demonic force or whatever is. We talked earlier about how plot and logic and things really following through, how they don't really seem to have a major presence in Italian horror. And I think we're at least able to glean that whatever this thing is passed along by being, scratched or cut or bitten or whatever by this force.
It's a supernatural virus, which I kind of appreciate. It's not a biological thing. It's really so much like it still has that like zombies just sort of appeared, as far as I understand, in modern culture. And then in this, at least and obviously in Evil Dead, it's a demonic force coming in and taking over these people and possessing them. This very much is like it's a virus that turns you into a demon, and you can pass it on by literally damaging the next person. I think I do find that a nice fun take on this silly.
They have one moment a little bit later on where they think it really has something to do with the film because, clearly events are mirroring what they're seeing. But I really don't believe it has much of anything to do with it. But I don't know. But yes, she's having her meltdown and her transformation behind the screen as somebody on the screen is being attacked. And I love how the person who's in the movie that they're watching is in like a tent or something, and somebody is stabbing and slashing at the fabric of the tent. Meanwhile, Carmen is slashing with her hands at the back of the movie screen, and people finally realize that there's somebody back there, and she ends up tearing right through the screen and falling through. It kind of makes you wonder in some ways if the opening of Scream 2 is a little bit of an homage to this film.
Possibly.
It's just a little bit of similar stuff, just similar enough. I don't know. But we see a little bit more of the transformation with Carmen here because
wonderful.
It's so gnarly with the hands, and I love how they're like 10 feet away from her, but
they're all watching
dark theater. They can see what's going on with her hands. They're like, check out her fingernails. And and she's got the green pus going on, and there's this really creepy effect with her tongue darting out. It's I don't know what's up with that, but and it doesn't come back, but it's cool. I love all the practical effects. I mean, clearly they wouldn't have been doing them any other way back then, but it makes this movie so much fun to watch.
Yeah, there's just something about the ingenuity of having to come up with concepts like that and actually executing them in a way that is fun and exciting. Like obviously combining both like claymation stuff and like oh my god, what is the thing with the hands and the like obviously the prosthetics of them like sort of inflating the hands and deflating the hands, like such great ideas that you could present on the screen.
Yes, absolutely fun. A lot of that stuff was like in the Thriller video back in the day too.
Dude, this movie, you could tell me that this is the same theater in Thriller, and I'd be like, yep, makes sense. Makes sense to me.
Yup. So this is the moment where everybody's freaking out and trying to run, and they get back to the doors and they're all bricked up.
Yeah.
So back to this very much being a supernatural situation, because I don't know how else this could have happened unless that guy with the mask, mask is just yeah, he's a Mason. He's really good at his job.
Man.
Oh God, it's just so funny because they're tearing down these door frames that, the doors are clearly fake at this point.
Yeah,
It's so they're all having that freak out, and Tony's like, the emergency exit, and they go racing off to find that. While this is happening, there's a lady that, for whatever reason, splits off from the group, finding that
that's
room
right.
where the usher was getting ready, and of course, infected Rosemary finds her and
Just
rips her scalp off.
yeah, gorgeous,
But
delicious.
Yup. Yup. It's so good. And this is where you get George and Ken trying to keep the door shut as Rosemary's clawing at them.
That's
and
right.
Tony and one of the other guys grab the Coke machine or whatever, and they bring it over and wedge it up against the door. So they've got one, technically two of them trapped. And I suppose Carmen's the only other, possessed person at this point. But yeah, she'll be taking care of some other people. I think we cut to the punks outside at this point.
We might as well just talk about them. But yeah, the punks are outside, actually in a car, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Yep, they're driving around. They've got a Coke can filled with cocaine, and
this movie
straw.
Not sponsored by Coke, but oh my god,
no. Not at all. But yeah, they're starting that through a straw inserted in the can, which I can only imagine the size of that line. But holy crap. And they're all, dogging on each other. You got three guys and this punk chick in the back. And they kind of cut back and forth a little bit between them racing around, listening to their music. It's clear that they've stolen this car as well.
Yes.
But yes, they're up to no good.
This, of course, is Billy Idol needle drop at this point, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's when there's a little bit more rampage inside the theater, and then they cut back right with the White Wedding, and this is where they start fighting over the can of Coke, and ultimately it goes everywhere. And the guy driving, I can't remember the character's name, he slams on the brakes and he's like, you're going to scrape up every single grain of this stuff. And they're all with their razor blades and their little pocket knives trying to pick up every little bit of Coke and get it back into an envelope or into the can or whatever.
I think his name is Hot Dog. I'm looking at the list here of names, and I think he's Hot Dog.
Because why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and this is a scene that I guess is cut out of this film in a lot of countries, for probably the bit where the guy in the back with the girl, starts scraping cocaine off of her breasts in a very creepy sensual way, and ultimately ends up slashing her as well. And I was just curious if perhaps because this happened right outside the theater and she had an open wound, perhaps this is how she became infected, because I don't remember seeing her attacked.
I don't remember that either. I just remember it just part of the chaos. All of a sudden I just see her in full on demon mode.
Right.
I don't know. I'm going to say no. I feel like again, who knows what the rules are? Suddenly there's bricks built up. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, there's all the bricks, but this back door clearly was open because they get,
and it just blows open, by the way.
There's this cop car that pulls up next to them.
Yes.
And were we illegally parked? And for whatever reason, the cops decide, okay, well, it's time to get after these kids. And they kind of run off, and it's like, fuck you, pigs. And
they keep saying pigs a lot, by the way, not just to the cops but to each other. There was one line that
I think one of them's named Piggy or something like that. So
funny.
Oh God. But yeah, they run into this alley that's on the side of the theater, and um, boy, I never noticed the ladder until much later in the movie. But yeah, they're trying to find an escape, and you're right, that door just kind of opens on its own
with a red light blaring through it.
Yep, 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 kind of perfect. And they sneak in, and I think we've totally missed some of the stuff happening in the theater at this point because a lot of the crowd has tried to barricade themselves
Yes.
up in the balcony area. They've been ripping up the seats to kind of cover up the different entrances, and we're introduced to the blind man who has had his eyes gouged out by, I think, by Carmen.
Yes.
And
or was it his daughter slash sister slash assistant? Because we the one that we didn't mention was at some point during while they're watching the movie, she walks away with some guy.
Oh yes,
I think
her lover has shown up because
he's an older, gross looking dude.
Yep. Yeah, he's I think there to meet her with the idea that they'll be able to slink away for, a little bit of fooling around because, hey, Uncle Werner is blind. So, but yeah, they're off.
They have like one of the best steps, in my opinion, because it's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, Rosemary just kind of pops out of nowhere with this rope and just kind of like lashes their necks together as they're making out. And yes, and then yes, somebody or other, yeah, because there's this moment where Werner is walking around after chaos has started, and he's like stepping on the ripped up pearls from I can't remember the character's name, but it's his niece or whatever. And he stumbles into her head, and that's when he's attacked by whoever it is. But and he gets his eyes gouged out, which it's funny because it takes him quite a while to turn, and he's just up there in that balcony when everybody else runs up there.
Yes,
and kind of warning them about what's to come. And I remember the dude that the niece, assistant, whatever, was making out with. He's been hung from the balcony. It's there's so much going on here. It's honestly, if I should have like taken some notes as to how the beats progress, because there's a lot happening here. But ultimately, I think it's the dude from the old married couple who has been turned, who has climbed up the rope and into the balcony, and is attacking one of them. And it's after he starts attacking them.
Tony the Pimp.
What's that?
He attacks Tony the Pimp.
Yeah, or no, he hops up there, and Tony's got his switchblade.
That's right.
But it's the dead niece who suddenly springs to life as a demon and attacks Tony. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And then they kind of those three, Tony, the old man, and the niece, kind of go over the balcony, and they're all like wound up in the rope with the
yes, and he's holding him like
and then this is where George finally takes the switchblade that Tony gave him, and he cuts the rope to prevent anybody else from climbing back up. And I don't remember what they did with the Werner at this point, or because I think he was the one that got outside through the door that the punks went in.
Was it? It was, wasn't it?
Because he's the one that ends up attacking the cops.
Yes, that is correct. So I think he gets pushed through the eyes, and then he is going through the rubble, if I'm not mistaken. He's also crawling through all the barricaded stuff.
Oh, under all the yeah.
And eventually finds that outside and kills the cops.
Yeah. Which, all this stuff had to have happened like right around each other then too, because those cops come right around the corner, like right after the punk get inside.
Yes.
So, so all this shit was happening while we were cutting back and forth to the punks in the car then. Okay.
Yeah.
We got this figured out. um, but they've you keep getting these shots of everybody just kind of sitting around
Yes.
with time passing and smoking cigarettes and just kind of waiting for help to show up. And then they suddenly decide, okay, we're going to try to beat through this wall and try to find an escape this way. It's so funny because they do make it through the wall and they do explore the rooms beyond, but there's really nothing. It's it's funny because it's this super clean and lit hallway with some doorways to a few different rooms, and then there's like this little vestibule at the end where it's all exposed brick with like really messy looking mortar, and you get these cool Evil Dead cam shots following along the brick wall, coming from a couple of directions. And people are freaking the fuck out too when they find this place. It's great. It's great. Boy.
I know that the couple at this point gets separated, and I know that.
The young couple, because well, he was looking around for her in all the chaos, but she was still on the main floor of the theater.
Yeah,
it's the old man, the old married dude who, after he's turned, just vomits all this just horrible goop onto her, and she manages to slink away from him, and in the very next scene she's dry as a bone.
It's almost like when Ash got covered in blood and then suddenly he's just
the continuity is definitely not there, but it's still fun. She meets back up with her man, and she's like, oh, it's not my blood. And and they go off to try to find their own escape. I know at one point or another, they eventually find this air shaft with the idea that they're going to crawl their way out.
Yes.
And that doesn't go super well for them.
I do love the setup of the scene is them crawling through the vent, and as they're crawling, he won't shut the fuck up, by the way. He's constantly like, I hear it, they're crawling they're at the back of us, oh my god, I can hear their nails, whatever. And then they like switch places at one point where she's in front of him. It's like, now it's in front of me. And that's what she goes.
Yes, and I love it's because clearly she has turned during all of this. He's just hearing her.
Yes.
It's so good. I just shout out to vents in movies too, because they're never actually this big. Nobody would ever be able to crawl through any type of a ventilation duct. It's just, but we wouldn't have Die Hard without it. So there you go. Thank you. Yes, in John McClane we trust. So they're eventually out of the picture. God, it's nuts. There's
so many bodies, so many chaos. Just there's so many red shirts, obviously, that are throughout this movie. The punks eventually get involved, and they see some shit, and then they get taken out. And then
because what's her butt ends up the punk girl ends up finding that room and like moving the pop machine or whatever and going in and getting attacked by the scalped woman. And there you go, that's how she turns. And then they're all racing around trying to find her. There's a moment where everybody decides we got to get out of here, and they start to clear the barricades, which is a horrible idea because all these demons start popping up from those entrances.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, our main foursome are trying to clear one of the other entrances, and they fight a few people back while they're doing that. And
they find the vent too. They find like, oh, maybe we should climb through here, and then they just decide not to at some point. Yeah. It's like, no, maybe not.
But yes, but they did notice it. Yes, that was kind of funny. Yeah. Good times. But they keep fighting off, and this is ultimately where we start seeing the demons with the glowing eyes now.
Yes,
which is so cool. It's just always a nice touch. But yeah, as they're fighting their way through, ultimately, Kathy turns
Yeah.
and she ends up. Oh yeah, here we get proto alien covenant, because they smack her down on the ground and her back erupts with this
Yeah.
tiny demon coming out of it,
Yeah.
that ends up slashing.
Ken.
Ken, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Once again, generic white dude name. Sorry. It is what it is, Ken. You, your fate was written in this film. Um,
Love it.
so, and he knows he's done for, and he doesn't want anything to happen to his friends. And he races off, telling them to find their own way out, and he's going to get away so he doesn't hurt them. But they, they feel very strongly about wanting to try to help him and how maybe they can or something. And they meet up with him in the lobby near the dirt bike, and Ken gets this wild idea that, hey, you need to kill me with the prop katana.
Yes. And this is when the movie's like, all right, cool. Evil Dead gave you chainsaws and shotguns. What about motorbikes and samurai swords? Let's go.
Fuck yes, here we go. Um, so yeah, George eventually takes off on that bike with that katana and
And the music
is
blares.
racing. Oh yeah, racing through that theater, slicing and dicing demons. Um, yeah, at one point or another, Cheryl gets on the bike with him.
Yes.
And there's this moment where she spills off of it. It's really haphazard, and I think they've managed to clean out most of the demons, and they kind of I think they're back on the balcony for some reason at this
I
point.
think so.
And this is where they start hearing a helicopter and it just comes crashing through the fucking ceiling.
And again, not knowing why the fuck that's happening. It just happens.
Nope.
But we can assume.
Yep. And those assumptions will definitely pay out very shortly. But yeah, the helicopter's down there on the ground. They go to investigate. More demons are approaching.
Yes.
They crawl inside and fire it up and slice a bunch of them with the mangled prop of the helicopter.
This is a cute
everybody
Dawn of the Dead kind of thing, I think.
Yeah. Yep. And they, for whatever reason, have this grappling gun in the helicopter that they're able to attach to this winch that's on the chopper itself. Yes. And fire that up into the hole in the ceiling. I know Cheryl's attacked at one point or another here by one of the demons, but they managed to kick it off. And then they winch themselves up to the roof. Mm-hmm. And once they get up there, it's Mr. Shiny Mask Dude.
Apparently about this all the whole time.
Yeah. It was always him. And he just kind of throws George into the opening, who manages to catch a piece of rebar and save himself.
Yeah.
And he's definitely more concerned with making sure that George makes his way down into the opening, and doesn't notice Cheryl with the grappling hook behind him. She catches the masked man in the back. George gets himself back up there, but this dude is, tough as nails, and he's still fighting with him. They manage to get him on the ground and with this pipe kind of force his head into some rebar.
Yeah.
And well, that's that. It's and I think it's at this moment that they finally realize what's going on around them. There's, shooting and, visible fires and emergency sirens everywhere.
Soundtrack is popping off at this point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This demon outbreak is absolutely gone wide in Berlin.
Yes.
So they make their way down this ladder that ultimately leads to the alley. I think they see a window across the way before they go down of somebody being attacked by a demon in their apartment or something. And once they hit ground level, they see other demons, behind some fences or whatever. And all of a sudden, there's this Jeep that pulls up, and as they're being chased, and they're like, "Get in!"
Like
And
join the resistance here.
yeah, yes. And I love how the kid with the shotgun
Yeah.
is like constantly eating something.
Yes.
And you can't really tell what it is, but this kid is just constantly jamming something into his face. And yeah, they shoot a few demons, and they get away, and the credits start going. And
Yeah.
you've got this slow zoom into the backs of our heroes. And then you notice Cheryl's neck.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she turns, and she's all demoned out. And boy, Sonny Boy just whips her around with that shotgun and just blows her off of that Jeep. Oh shit. And the funny thing is, I was expecting it to be George all this time that turns, because he gets cut by something in the arm.
He does, and we don't see what it is. We don't know if it's a person or some part of the debris, but
part of the theater or something. And clearly it would have had to have been some debris or something. Otherwise, he would have turned at some point.
Yes.
If we're following this movie's almost logic. But yeah, nah, he's fine. And they go off to face some uncertain fate.
Yeah. George is the final boy in this movie.
Yeah, he's the final boy. He was the goodest boy. But yeah, that's it's a pretty brief hour and a half movie, and that's that.
Yeah, there we go.
And you get the fun score again borrowing heavily from In the Hall of the Mountain King, and it's pretty cool. It's I enjoyed the hell out of this movie. I'm very curious to see what Demons 2 is like, because it's set in an apartment building or something.
Yeah. Pre-Evil Dead did that. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to check that out too. I've yet to see it. I know it's on Shudder. But yeah, that rewatching this definitely has gotten me like, okay, cool. It's available. I should watch this now.
Yeah, man. I think wow. I need to check out some more films by this particular Bava. I know he's done some others, so yeah, that's worth researching, I think.
Yeah. I want to check out his movie
down
Body Puzzle, which is the title of one of his movies. I want to check that out.
All right. Yeah, and I'm always down for anything that Argento has a hand in. His work is so much fun. Definitely the gateway for a lot of people into Italian horror, of course. But yeah, it's God, what a fun movie. I did not find much in the way of trivia about this.
There isn't. I tried to find some too. I was like, there's literally almost nothing about this movie, and that's why I'm like, that's why it feels like such a hidden gem for the most part. If anyone's seen any Argento movies or anything like that, this is something that I actually did not know was involved in until literally one of those lists. And then someone mentioned like, hey, it's Evil Dead in the movie theater, and I'm like, all right, cool, let me check it out.
Yeah. The cast is filled with a bunch of people that I know next to nothing about, although they've clearly been in some other Italian horror films. And, I'm sure many of them have gone on to do other things. I know Argento had just come off of Phenomena, which actually was a pretty big deal for him in the mid-'80s. I like that one quite a bit. That may have been one of the first Argento films I ever saw. Just because I had a buddy in undergrad who was really into those, and I definitely remember us watching that. But yeah, that one definitely more of a giallo. This one, no, this is just a monster movie in a horror theater.
Which, hey, sometimes that's all you need, Sometimes you just need something just simple, like, all right, how many bodies can we fit in a theater? Cool. This is how we could do all this mass destruction inside this one place.
Yep, absolutely. This is again perfect, tight little 90-minute film, and yeah, it's just a ton of fun. Do you have any final thoughts on Demons, or did we pretty much get it all out there?
For the most part, I think we got it all out there. I will say, watching it this time around, I did finally see some connection to the man with the metal face and the mask. His mask is very much similar, obviously, because the mask is made out of like metal. The eyes that he has is the same as the eyes in the thing, so there's definitely a connection there. What connection? I have no idea. Other than
it's explained in Demons too.
Hey, I hope so. I wonder how much of a continuation, if it is, or if it is just honestly one of those things where they just rename something and it's something totally different. I'm kind of excited to see what Demons 2 actually ends up being.
Well, apparently, and now this is one bit of trivia that I did see.
Yeah.
When these films were released in Germany, Demons 2 was actually released as
Demons 1, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then this one was the sequel. Sure.
Sure. All right, cool. Sounds good.
Yeah. It works. It works. But hey, man, this was fun. I really appreciate you bringing this movie to my attention. Something I've seen on lists before. I knew it existed, but I didn't have any idea that it was as fun as it was. So
yeah,
thank you so much for that.
No,
it's very cool.
Of course, because there's horror movies I feel like everyone talks about a lot. We always bring up Evil Dead when we think about this type of movie. It's glad that there is another alternative out there, and it can be this. Same thing with like Night of the Creeps is another one that I think of that no one really talks about as often, and that's another like zombie horror film that I wish gets more love. So that's why, yeah, I'm glad that I was able to bring this to your audience, so that everyone can talk about it and everyone can watch it and subscribe to Shudder, because Shudder is an awesome platform.
It is absolutely worth the $5-6 or whatever it is that it is. But yeah, Mario, if you'd like, where can people find you?
Of course, you can find me over at Point in Progress, where we are running back up our main podcast, MCU University, which wrapped up its 2 seasons. We will be back, but it's going to be more of a sporadic release because we were really just catching up through all of the older Marvel movies. We did it. We accomplished that goal. Now, when Kraven the Hunter comes out, we're going to be forced to watch that in like 2 years or this year or whatever. But yeah, definitely check out at least the backlog, because there's some good gems in there. And of course, you can always find me on Twitter at that Rivera until that place explodes. Then you can find me on Blue Sky, and then you can find me on Threads, and then you can find me on OnlyFans. And you can find me everywhere. Okay, just everywhere. All right.
Sounds like a solid plan. Well, this has been. I know it's all a shit show. It's oh God. But yeah, we'll do our best to enjoy watching it all burn. But this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, slot, and subscribe. If you are so inclined, I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.